Sermon 1. From a sermon in which the Commander of the Faithful mentions the genesis of the heavens and the earth, the creating of Adam, the Hajj, etc. It contains praising Allah, the creating of the universe and of the angels, the selecting of prophets, the deputation of the Prophet, the Quran, and the rulings of the Sharia, Islam's legislative system. All praise belongs to Allah, whose worth cannot be described by speakers, whose bounties cannot be computed by those who compute, and whose claim to obedience cannot be met by those who attempt to do so. The one whom the height of intellectual courage cannot sufficiently appreciate, and the depths of understanding cannot possibly reach. He is the one for describing whom no limit is laid down, no ample praise exists, no time is ordained, and no duration is fixed. He brought forth creation through his omnipotence, dispersed winds through his compassion, and firmed the shaking earth with rocks. The foremost in religion is to acknowledge him. The perfection of acknowledging him is to testify to him. The perfection of testifying to him is to believe in his oneness. The perfection of believing in his oneness is to regard him as the absolutely pure one. The perfection of his purity is to deny him attributes, because every attribute is a proof that it is different from that to which it is attributed, and everything to which something is attributed is different from the attribute itself. Thus, whoever attaches attributes to Allah recognizes his similitude. Whoever recognizes a similitude for him recognizes him as being two. Whoever recognizes him as being two recognizes the existence of parts for him. Whoever recognizes parts for him mistakes him. Whoever mistakes him points at him. Whoever points at him attributes limitations to him, and whoever attributes limitations to him numbers him. Whoever asks, "In what is he?" holds that he is contained, and whoever asks, "On what is he?" holds that he is not on something else. He is a being, but not through the phenomenon of coming into being. He exists, but not out of non-existence. He is with everything, but not in physical nearness. He is different from everything, but not in physical separation. He acts, but without connotation of movements and parts. He sees even when there is none to be looked at from among his creation. He is the one and only, such that there is none with whom he may keep company, or whom he may miss in absence. Genesis. He initiated creation and commenced it originally, without undergoing a prior contemplation, without making use of any experiment, without inventing any movement, and without experiencing any mental aspiration. He allotted to all things terms, and put together variations, gave them properties, and determined their features. He knew them before creating them, fully realizing their limits and confines, appreciated their propensities and intricacies. When the Almighty created the openings of the atmosphere, expanse of firmament and strata of winds, he allowed water, the waves of which were stormy, and the surges of which leaped one over the other, to flow onto it. He loaded dashing winds and breaking typhoons, ordered them to shed it back as rain, gave the wind control over the rain's vigour, acquainting it with its limitations. The wind blew under it, while the water flowed furiously above it. Then the Almighty created wind, and made its movement sterile, perpetuated its status, intensified its motion, and spread it far and wide. Then he ordered the wind to raise deep waters, and intensify the ocean's waves, so that the wind churned the water like the churning of curd, pushing it fiercely into firmament, throwing its front status on the rear, while the stationary status flowed till its level was raised, and surface became full of foam. Then the Almighty raised the foam to the open wind and vast firmament, making therefrom the seven heavens, sky's strata. He made the lower one as a stationary surge, the upper one as a protective ceiling and high edifice, without any pole to support it or nail to hold it together. Then he decorated them with stars and with the meteor's light, and hung in it the shining sun and effulgent moon under the revolving sky, moving the ceiling and rotating the firmament. Creation of angels. Then he created a crack between the high skies and filled it with all kinds of his angels. Some of them are in prostration, so they do not rise. Others are in kneeling positions, so they do not stand. Some of them are ranked in array, so they do not leave their stations. Others are extolling Allah without ever getting tired. The sleep of their eye, the slip of the wit, the languor of the body, or the effect of forgetfulness does not affect them. Among them are those who work as trusted bearers of his message, thus serving as articulating tongues of his prophets, and there are those who carry his orders and commands. Among them are the protectors of his creatures and guardians of the gates of the gardens of paradise. Among them are those whose steps are fixed on earth, but their necks protrude into the skies. Their limbs are out on all sides. Their shoulders are in accord with the columns of the divine throne. Their eyes are cast down before it. They have spread their wings down under it, and have rendered between themselves and all other curtains of honour and screens of power. They do not think of their Creator through images, they imagine of him. They do not impute created attributes to him. They do not confine him within abodes, and do not point at him through illustrations. Creation of Adam. Allah collected clay from hard, soft, sweet and salty earth, which he moistened with water till it became pure. He kneaded it with moisture till it became gluey. From it he carved an image with curves, joints, limbs and parts. He solidified it till it dried for a fixed time and a known duration. Then he blew into it out of his spirit, whereupon it took the pattern of a human being with a mind that governed him, intelligence which he made use of, limbs that served him, organs that changed his status, sagacity that differentiates between right and wrong, tastes and smells, colours and species. He was a mixture of clays of different colours, cohesive materials, divergent contradictories and differing properties, like heat, cold, softness and hardness. Then Allah asked the angels to fulfill his promise with them and to accomplish the pledge of his injunction by acknowledging him, by prostrating to him and submitting to his honoured status. So Allah said to the angels, "Prostrate to Adam." So they prostrated except Iblis, Satan. Quran 2:34, 7:11, 17:61, 18:50 and 20:116. Arrogance withheld him, Satan, and vice overcame him, taking pride in his being created of fire, looking down at the clay creation. So Allah granted him a respite in order to let him be worthy of incurring his wrath, to complete man's test and to fulfill the promise which he had made to Satan. Thus he said, Allah said, "Verily you have been allowed time till the known day." Quran 15:38-39, 38:81. Thereafter, Allah placed Adam where he made his life and stay safe, cautioning him about Iblis and his animosity towards him. His enemy, Iblis, envied Adam's abiding in paradise and accompanying the virtuous, so he turned his conviction into wavering and resolve into weakness, thus turning his happiness into fear and prestige into shame. Then Allah offered Adam the chance to repent, taught him words of mercy, promised him a return to his paradise, then sent him down to the place of trial and the procreation of his offspring. Allah chooses his prophets. From Adam's offspring, Allah chose prophets and took their pledge for his revelation and for carrying out his message as their trust. Throughout the course of time, many people altered Allah's trust to them, ignored his status, and accepted associates with him. Satan turned them away from knowing Allah, keeping them away from worshipping him. Then Allah sent his messengers and a series of prophets to the people to get them to fulfill the pledges of his creation, to recall his bounties to them, to exhort them by preaching, to unveil before them the hidden virtues of wisdom, and to show them the signs of his omnipotence. Of these signs he demonstrated the sky which is raised over them, the earth that is placed beneath them, a means of livelihood to sustain, death that makes them no more, ailments that turn them old, and incidents that successively betake them. Allah never allowed his creation to remain without a prophet deputed by him, or a book sent down from him, or a binding argument, or a standing plea. These messengers were such that they did not feel few, because of their number being small, or the number of those who belied them being big. Among them was either a predecessor who would name the one to succeed him, or a follower who was introduced by the predecessor. Prophetic mission of Muhammad. In this way, ages passed by and times rolled on. Fathers passed away while sons took their places, till Allah deputed Muhammad as his prophet. In fulfillment of his promise and in completion of his prophetic mission, the pledge to Muhammad had been taken from the prophets. His traits of character were well reputed, and his birth was honourable. The people of the earth at this time were divided into different nations. Their aims were separate and ways diverse. They either loved Allah and his creation, or twisted his names, or turned to those other than him. Through Muhammad, Allah guided them out of wrongdoing, and with his efforts took them out of ignorance. Then Allah chose Muhammad to meet him, preferred him for his own nearness, regarded him as being too dignified to remain in this world, and decided to remove him from this place of trial. So he drew him towards himself with honour. May Allah shower his blessings on him and on his progeny. The Holy Quran and the rules of Sharia. But the Prophet left among you the same which other prophets left among their people. Prophets do not leave their people intentionally in the dark, without a clear path and a standing sign. He left the book, Quran, of your Creator to clarify what he permits and what he prohibits, what is obligatory and what is discretionary, the repealing injunctions and the repealed ones, the permissible matters and the compulsory ones, what is particular and what is general, lessons and illustrations, long and short ones, clear and obscure ones, detailing its abbreviations and clarifying its obscurities. In it there are some verses knowing which is obligatory, and others people's ignorance of which is permissible. It also contains what it appears to be obligatory according to the book, but its repeal is signified by the Prophet's deed, sunnah, or that which appears compulsory according to the Prophet's deed, but the book permits one not to follow it. Or there are those verses which are obligatory in a given time, but not so after that time period. Its prohibitions also differ. Some are major ones, for which there exist the perils of the fire, hell, and others are minor, for which there are prospects of forgiveness. There are also those of which a small portion is also acceptable to Allah, but they are capable of being expanded. In the same sermon, he spoke thus about Hajj. Allah has made the pilgrimage, Hajj, to his sacred house obligatory on you. People go towards it to satisfy their thirst for spirituality, as animals and birds yearn to the water springs. Allah, the Most Glorified One, made it a sign of their supplication before his greatness and their acknowledgement of his dignity. He selected from among his creation those who, on listening to his call, responded to it and testified to his word. They stood in the status of his prophets and resembled his angels who surrounded the divine throne, securing all the benefits of performing his worship and hastening towards his promised forgiveness. Allah, the Most Glorified One, made it his sacred house, a symbol for Islam and an object of respect for those who turn to it. He made pilgrimage to it obligatory and laid down its claim for which he held you responsible to fulfill. Thus, Allah, the Most Glorified One, said, "Pilgrimage to the house is made incumbent on people, purely for the sake of Allah, on those who cannot afford the journey there. And whoever denies it, verily Allah is sufficiently independent of the worlds." Quran 3:96-97.